isn't this exciting? We have Katrine from Denmark, where all
Yes.
you people out there, my daughter-in-law is from Denmark as well. So this is kind of special for me. And here I am in Los Angeles. And interestingly enough, so is Katrine here in Los Angeles. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to join, both because of the shared values, but I'm also happy to be here in LA, since our normal market is Scandinavia and Northern Europe. So it's very exciting for me.
Well, we're super happy you're here, and that we'll get to meet you and learn a little bit more about you here on the Leaders Who Care series, and more after even. So let's start by, if you could briefly introduce yourself. And by the way, when I say briefly, I mean not the whole story, just
No, because
like
you
where
know
you.
that's gonna be a long story.
Yeah, I know. Just like, hey, where are you from? What about family? Where you live now? And then we'll get into the business stuff, and we'll have fun from there. How's that?
Yes, perfect. So my name is in Danish, Katrine. People tend to call me Kat. It's a bit easier. I'm from Denmark. I don't look very Scandinavian, but I am from Denmark. Grew up in a family in Jutland, very close to the west coast. So I grew up by the beach. I grew up by the ocean. When I grew a little bit older, I moved to Copenhagen. And after I finished my studies there, I had an opportunity to go to Bali and live and work there. So of course I went. Who wouldn't?
Exactly.
Also with that dream of being able to work and then surf, dive, be in the ocean in all my breaks. And that's literally what I did when I came to Bali. Like I spent most time in the ocean than I did above the ocean.
Oh,
So in Bali, that's also where I got the idea to found the company Copenhagen Cartel, which is why I'm also here today.
cool. Any you don't have any relatives in the U.S., do you?
No, so I'm actually here since we are trying to spread the good message around. We had a lot of great success and a lot of great traction in Europe. And we, of course, I believe as a true ocean lover that everywhere in the world, people will understand our purpose, because Copenhagen Cartel is an ocean impact label. And we're just here to create awareness, to create impact, positive impact for the ocean. So
Cool.
I believe that people here in the US and especially here in California will, of course, resonate with those values.
Yeah, I think you're pretty well 100% right on that. Now, when you were a kid, you said you were in the ocean a lot, and when you were a kid and a teenager, were you always in the ocean? Did you have a passion towards like breaking rules, like being disruptive? Would you, or you were, were you promoting? Did you do, little acting things in school,
Yeah.
or were you the quiet one? Which I doubt. Are you the quiet one?
I don't think anyone would call me the quiet one at all. So I always had so much energy in my body. And I always been like, whether it was a school play or it was like a concert for harmonica players, like I was always in the front, even though I was not very good at everything I did. I was always like, pick me, pick me. So I always been very high energy person. I always been a very emotional person. So I also think that those things combined, high energy, very driven, together with a very passionate, I will call it that, emotional person, was actually also the path that I was looking for growing up. Like, how can those two qualities actually fit in to a certain path? And I had no clue growing up. Like, I had no dream of becoming a biologist or becoming like a big business person or anything like that. I just knew I wanted to work with something that made sense. So after I moved to Copenhagen, I always engaged and worked in startups. And that was everything from tech startups to health startups to all kinds of different startups, because I just like the dynamic environment. And I really like creating and seeing that the effort my zero, the effort that I put in actually became an impact. And you could see it like almost one to one. So I really like that whole mentality of creating a startup. And then I went to Bali, found my true purpose, and then I started Copenhagen Cartel.
So why so you had an interesting journey. You got some really good quality education in Denmark and Spain.
Yeah.
And you were a promoter, you were a performer, you were involved in influencer marketing. And then you got to Copenhagen Cartel. So
Yeah.
I see where you got your why, or where you decided you wanted to do something. But first of all, I want to ask, why Copenhagen Cartel?
That's a good question. There was a lot of people who asked me this question. So the thing is, when I started Copenhagen Cartel, I was a bit unsure whether I wanted to do a non-profit or a for-profit company, since the thing that I was very interested in was to create this community of like-minded people. I wanted to create something where we could come together with shared values and actually together have this impact. When I was like looking to start up Copenhagen Cartel, I thought about different kinds of names. And in the beginning, I was like Copenhagen Community. And it kind of seemed a little bit, bland in my mind. I wanted to create something cool. I wanted to create something where there was a spark of interest immediately to kind of look for more. And I thought it was funny when I looked up the word cartel. Obviously has a pretty negative meaning when you say it in society today. But if you look up the meaning of a cartel, it is kind of like a community.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, why not build a positive community that could have a positive impact on the ocean? And since I was living in Copenhagen, I thought, okay, Copenhagen Cartel. So my sense, it was kind of like we are born in Copenhagen, but our cartel is worldwide, hopefully. So the name was actually from a community perspective.
It's interesting because the sea and the sea come together well. It wouldn't have
Yeah.
worked the same way if this was Colombia and they did Colombia Cartel.
That
But
will probably, like already now, just a little funny story. So when I'm emailing my bank here in Denmark, they block my email. So it's the only negative consequence I experienced so far with the name was my bank is like, I have to communicate with them on my private email. And I was like saying to my bank advisor, I said to him, if I was a cartel, do you think I would put it in my email? Like,
exactly.
what? I don't really understand your whole security measurements here. But that has been the only negative consequence of choosing that name. I would say, on the contrary, it's been very positive because a lot of people ask me about the name, and it kind of is a conversation starter. And when I explain it to people, people are like, that makes sense. And they don't forget the name again.
Yeah,
So that sense has been very positive.
no, I like it, and you're right. If it was, I don't think a cartel would actually put that in their email. You know, in our business, we've talked a little bit about this. We purposely work with leaders who care because we know that they understand that they can make even a bigger economic impact when they're making a social impact at the same time.
Mhm.
Share with us how you have focused on people and the ocean more than, for example, selling bikinis, like
Yeah.
you're just selling bikinis, and how you came about being clear that's the way to go move forward.
Yeah. So that's back to the whole cartel again, because the whole initial starting point for me was to create a community. So from the very beginning of Copenhagen Cartel, we had a really big community focus. So every time I went out to do public speaking, I did an interview, I always mentioned, I don't really care about the products. The products are conversation starters. What we are building is a community. So we spent a lot of time creating a lot of engagements, activities, cleanup events, all these kinds of engagement that people could come in on. So instead of closing in on ourselves, figuring out how can we as a company grow, we figured out how can we as a community grow. And as the community grows, that is also where the company grows. And we kind of expanded that strategy. So in the beginning, it was very much like a B2C strategy, where we, of course, did a lot of cleanup events. We did yoga events. We did pool parties, like everything we could do possibly to engage with our B2C community. But what we found out is there's just as big a B2B community. So we actually started this year, 22, by inviting all corporates in also to join in on this mission. So we do private cleanup events. For example, we did a big cleanup with Coca-Cola Denmark, Unilever Denmark. I was actually a little bit cheeky because I called them up and I said, hey guys, on our cleanup events, we find a lot of Coca-Cola bottles. We also find a lot of Unilever wrappings. So maybe you want to help us out. And they were super open-minded and actually wanted to help out. So we did a lot of activities with them. I came out, I talked for their leaders, I talked with their employees to tell them about the importance of innovation, of sustainability in the design process, etc. And then we did a physical cleanup. And as you also know, it's not just about how many kilos did we actually collect on the cleanup. It's about the symbolic effect of people actually seeing that in a clean country like Denmark, we also have big issues with rubbish everywhere, and that rubbish actually goes to pollute the ocean. So having people experience that themselves is actually the biggest impact that we can create, because I know that you will never go back to throwing things in nature after you did a cleanup event. And you will probably also be a little bit more focused on other people, maybe your friends and your peers, in actually educating them about why is it important that we collectively take these actions. So in that sense, I think I was the only CEO spending almost 20 days out of the office on the beaches of Denmark with my hands in the sand, cleaning up, because it's such a big part of our DNA and our purpose.
Well, you know what they say, what's that expression? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. That is me.
There's a couple of other expressions.
And especially when I'm outside of the office, that is actually where I feel the most achieved and the most alive. That is when I get to engage with our community. And I actually just, as we also talked about on our intro talk, I actually just handed over the CEO stick to my partner. She is the former COO and now she's the CEO. And the reason why I did it was because I wanted to get a bit more back to basics. I wanted to feel that energy, that purpose, those values, because that's the whole reason why I started. And I kind of felt like being a CEO, spending a lot of my time with my head down in budgets, my head down in sheets and, you know, stakeholder management, all of this, I kind of got further away from the true purpose of why I started Copenhagen Cartel. And I miss that so much. And I'm very happy to be here in LA now, because I actually had the time to connect, for example, with Surfrider Foundation. I went out to do cleanup events, ocean gardening projects, all these community events that I really love. So I think it's such an important part of our company that we can't forget it, because that's the foundation.
It reminds me of a couple other quotes. Maya Angelou always used to say that people will always remember how you made them feel. And there's another quote that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Exactly.
And so it's right on the money. You know, it's fascinating. You got Unilever and Coke clients of ours that we work with them too, and they certainly know about sustainability. The question is, they have to keep doing it, but it's taken decades, literally, for leaders and investors to realize that aligning all their types of capital, social, environmental, their investment dollars, their philanthropy, whatever, it's so important for them to attract and keep talent, as well as it's really good for business. And as you would know as well as anybody, the fashion industry has unfortunately had a very negative impact on the environment, and a reputation that not really to be proud of, regarding employees and type of what they do in other countries, etc. So can you describe more about what I call your cultural compass, where leaders really have to care about and actually be their values, and as a result, what you're doing to create compelling experiences like you started describing for everybody, for your employees, for your customers, your partners, etc.
I think that is actually leading back to why I chose to become the CVO and not the CEO. So I think in the world that we live in today, we need to think holistically, like that we are at a point of no return. So the future leaders needs to think holistically, and we can't just have executives looking down at their Excel sheet for the answers, because the answers are not there. The answers are if we look out and see the world as it is. So in my opinion, I think that for me as a person, it is important that in everything we do, whether it be putting together a budget, hiring new talents, or whatever we do, the purpose is the foundation. And if you forget that foundation, that is actually the road to failure. So I try to push in whether we have investment meetings, or we have employee kickoffs, or we do new partnerships with other B2C brands. That is the true impact that we do, is to push our purpose. So in Denmark, we did a lot of different collaborations with a craft beer brand, also with Coca-Cola, also with other fashion brands. But the whole idea for me is to help us together push that purpose of actually saving the ocean. So whether it's been a collaboration with the beer company or with a fashion company, the whole focus has been ocean and the love for the ocean. So I also spend a lot of my time going visiting universities, because I actually think that is super important to get that inspiration in very early. So every time I go to these universities, I actually feel that purpose super strongly. Yeah. Since they're so pure, the university students, they haven't been polluted by the corporate world as much. Right. And what I really learn and get inspired from when I go there is their passion to make a difference. So what I see is that the younger generation, they are not satisfied with getting a big paycheck anymore. They actually choose purpose over paycheck when they find a job to work in after they finish their education. So I also see that we as a company receive a lot of what do you call it in English? A lot of applications. Right. Without us actually seeking for any roles, we receive so many applications. And I really reflected upon, why do we do this? And it's because people understand why we exist. Why is this company? It's not just to produce another new product, because the world doesn't need new products. We are actually here on a bigger mission. And I think that in order to be able to attract young people in the future and actually keep them in the company, it's not enough to just offer them a big pension or a big paycheck. You need to offer them that purpose of, why do they get up in the morning? Why do they work their asses off? Yeah, it's for something bigger. And I think we nailed that from the beginning, because it's a natural part of who I am as a person also. Like, one person actually told me one time, you're the perfect salesperson. And I was like, no, I'm not at all. Because if I do not believe in the purpose, if I do not believe in the product, I can't sell shit, But if I do believe in that purpose, I will work, until I kind of can't work anymore, because I want to.
And because you're not really working. And
I'm not really working.
Work, you're not really working, right?
Exactly.
And I think
that is what we need to understand as leaders. That is also how you motivate employees today. It's not about, of course, you need to give them a good environment, a good paycheck, good security and everything, but that's hygiene. Of course, you need to do that. But we are on level 2 now. And level 2 is actually to give employees something more, and that is the purpose. And I think more and more, luckily, employers are starting to understand that. Also brands, companies, and the bigger ones, when I talk with Coke, they also understand, okay, it needs to dig a little bit deeper than just, we're a big company, we give you a big paycheck, that it isn't cutting anymore.
Well, Coke is supposed to be teaching us all to sing in harmony. Don't you remember that song?
Yeah.
That's what they're supposed to be
doing. That was their purpose, yeah. And I think also, like, as consumers today are starting to grow a lot of knowledge about production. Like, that was the biggest kept secret of the fashion world for years, is actually the production methods. Whereas people are actually now, with social media and everything, is starting to understand how the whole wheel is actually put together. So I think with new employees, new young people coming in, both as consumers and employees, you need to change your mindset as a company if you want to, be successful. Also on the bottom line. So it's not just about creating another new sustainable company. It's actually about creating a sustainable company with a great profit and to be a great case for the future. And that's what we are trying to do, to showcase you can actually, make good business, but still think sustainable.
I don't think you're trying to do it. I actually think you're doing it. And you're right. We found out, especially when we founded Fifth Element, that leaders were finally realizing that, number one, they're not going to get great people if they don't offer money and purpose. Both, they're not willing to give up one for the other anymore. And they're realizing that the people will stay and thrive no matter how hard the work is if they have both of those. Money doesn't just make you happy, but it's part of it, but doesn't just make you happy. And so you're right on the money. That's actually where the whole Leaders Who Care thing came from, is that they realized if they don't care about them, they're not going to get the great people. And at the end of the day, it's the people, the community, like you said, not just the product that makes it. So tell us a little bit, with that said, tell us a little bit about why people love what your products are.
So I think they love the products because they are different, right? So when I started out, and that's also something that showcased, I didn't really think that this would become a big company. So I started Copenhagen Cartel as this passion project. And I was living in Bali, surfing every day, and I had a real big issue with the swimwear I was wearing. So first of all, if I wanted something that stayed put, I needed to go look at these performance swimwear companies. And it wasn't, to be honest with you, it wasn't looking very good. It was not very sexy. And if you wanted the swimwear that actually looked super good, you literally flashed the whole beach every time you went surfing. So my thing was, I wanted to create swimwear that both had this performance ability to stay put, look good, but at the same time, I wanted to create it from a material that was not doing harm to the environment.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're working with recycled nylon, which comes from old fishing nets, all like post-consumer waste, etc. So we're working with a Norwegian company called Nofir, and they are actually marine garbage men, to say the least. In my opinion, they are heroes because they actually go and collect all these leftover fishing nets, and they clean them, they sort them, and then we regenerate the nylon and we create swimwear. And when I started the company in Denmark, people were like, but you know that we only wear swimwear for 2 months a year here in Denmark. Like, it's super cold all the time. And I was like, oh yeah, that's also right. But I needed some swimwear myself. So the whole journey actually started with swimwear made from recycled nylon. And then we kind of developed it into also doing athleisure wear. I love to explore. You can maybe sense that I'm a very curious person. So when the pandemic hit, I saw all these people running around in their hoodies and their sweatpants made out of cotton. And I looked into, like, what is cotton actually? Yeah, it's a natural fiber, but it's actually not a very good fiber for the environment because it consumes so much water. Like, it's incredible. And 40% of the global population is lacking water. So it's really stupid calculation.
Right.
So I looked into what other fibers can we use. And because I love the ocean, I was like, the answer must be in the ocean. So now we created this material out of seaweed fibers that actually mimics the qualities of cotton. But it just doesn't consume any water because seaweed doesn't need any water than the water it's already in. So I think the reason why people actually fell in love with Copenhagen Cartel was because, one, we create some products that are actually disrupting the traditional fashion industry. We are also more than just talk. We actually do a lot of stuff. So they see us on the beaches. They see me as the founder of the company actually involved in every beach cleanup that we do. We do a lot of initiative with Coca-Cola, with Unilever, all of these, where we actually try to push them in the right direction. So I think that the reason why we got success in Europe was because we're more than just talk. We actually walk the walk. And I think that is what we need today. Companies who actually just try, they dare to try of course we do mistakes. Of course, like we tried materials and we thought it was super sustainable. Then after some research, we found out, okay, maybe this isn't the right solution. But I think that if you don't dare to try, and if society is like a you can't fail a culture, then we don't get anywhere. So you need people who are willing to actually put themselves out there to try, to fail, and to get up again and try again. And that is what we did. So we are also super transparent about the fuck ups that we did, the learnings that we learned along the way. And I think that that is actually what made us successful, is authenticity and actually taking action.
Yeah, and I think people love that. You know, if you're right, if you're not failing, you're probably not doing anything.
No,
And
it's too
and if
safe.
yeah, and if everybody, if there's no conflict or difference of opinions, there's probably no new ideas that are happening
No,
either.
exactly.
So what? Why wouldn't we do that then?
Yeah.
It's no, I think you're right. I think people love the fact of the transparency and you know the nets and the nettings in the ocean are a massive problem, as you know.
Mm.
That's a whole conversation in itself. So
Yeah.
that makes a big impact. And the younger generation, I agree. I think every generation has wanted to make a difference in their own way, but the urgency that's around right
Mm.
now has made the younger generation now say, we got to do something about this now, not 5 years, not 10 years,
Yeah.
but now. So
And I think it's actually incredibly interesting that this whole revolution is led by the younger generation. And I think that I'm also sometimes I'm actually getting a bit sad because I'm looking at, you know, what we're doing to the planet, and I'm sometimes thinking like, does it even matter what I'm doing with Copenhagen Cartel? But where I'm actually getting all my hopes and dreams and optimism is from the younger generation. Like
sure.
you see them everywhere in the world actually pushing for the revolution, and I think that is so aspirational.
And
And
you
I
know
think,
why it's sustainable? And maybe you can comment on this. You know, when when mom or dad, let's say, come home from work or whatnot, and they say, and they're tired, or my boss sucks, or we did, you know, I don't know what we're doing there. It's just ridiculous. The kids hear it and feel it. And
mm,
when they also come home and say, hey, let's have dinner together. I want to tell you what happened today, you know, at the office and how we achieved this and this. And we're going to be doing this community thing over there and type of thing. And the kids are seeing that also.
yeah,
And I mean, kids, I mean, from 2 years old up to 25 years old type of deal.
yeah,
Um, that's how you're making a big difference. And that's how it's sustainable because they want to keep going with
mm,
that happening. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you also is you talked about when we talk to leaders who care, they get that there's three types of well-being. There's the financial well-being, there's the physical well-being, and the mental well-being. So
mm,
it sounds like you're addressing all of those. Is that right?
yeah. I think that's just the person I am. So I am very holistically in my approach, in my way of living, but also in my way of doing business. And I think that also when I talk to, we have a few investors in on Copenhagen Cartel, and when I kind of have our monthly meetings with them, some of the areas is that they always say to me, "Don't lose that fire." Like that is the thing you have. Do not make anyone make you lose that fire. And I think that is my holistic approach to. It's not just a success criteria to be financially well. It's not just a success criteria to be mentally well. Like it's the whole circle of it all. And that is an approach I try to put into the company, but also put out into the world. And I think I see a lot of people resonating with that set of values.
And that's exactly what I was referring to because you should always know that it goes well beyond just your interaction with that one person.
Yeah,
That person goes home, that person goes to their friends, that person is all over, and it does go down, you know, into the community. So
it
you know,
does.
don't lose. You sound like Alicia Keys when you say fire.
Yeah,
Um,
that is my theme song. Actually, waking up in the morning. That is my theme song. The
so,
Alicia Keys. So if you need a soundtrack for this podcast, you can put that one on.
okay, got it. It'll be good. I love that one too. So, last
Yeah,
question on this part. In
yeah.
in 2021, a client of mine told me, they said, the year 2020, Mark, it was the year that flew by slowly. And
Yeah,
I thought about it and said, yeah, that kind of makes sense. It doesn't, but it does at the same
yeah,
time. So with all that's gone on the last few years, can you tell me what you're most grateful for and what you're most hopeful for?
yeah. I think that the year of 2020, I completely agree. It was a weird, weird year. And I founded Copenhagen Cartel in 2020. So we were kind of like a pandemic company coming out. But what I learned in those years is that once there is a crisis in society, or like a kind of a breaking point,
Hmm.
you need more than ever to believe in something bigger, and you need to wake up for something bigger. So in my sense, that those years actually gave people a reason to find and understand their purpose much more than they normally were supposed to do. So I actually think that I felt that people got closer into their core of what they believe in and what they want to live by. And also getting together in these communities became really important, because suddenly you couldn't come together physically because of the whole lockdown. And once that was kind of out of the way, people were like starving to go out and socialize,
Right.
and actually socialize on shared values. So I see a trend right now in people actually wanting to meet up physically if possible every time. Like, people are so fed up with online meetings not working, like technology not working, blah blah blah. They just want to meet up, feel each other, feel each other's energy, and actually share you know life views and values. And I think that is the biggest learning I gotten from the 2 years, is people are back to their core now. And it makes me very happy, because I can see that getting back to the core is also connecting back into what really matters. And what really matters for me is, the holistic approach of environment, ocean, social, everything. And that is, I think, what we need to focus on in 23.
Can't say it any better myself. So I'm super grateful that you did do that in 2020. And
Me too.
right, a lot of amazing companies have come about in big pandemics, if you will, like that. So good for you, and I'm super hopeful and super confident that the fire is going to be there for a long time, and you're going to
Yeah.
keep taking the lead to make stuff happen. And the ocean takes up most of our planet,
Over
actually.
70% actually.
So if we don't take care of it, it's not a good thing. So congrats on leading the way, and congrats on being a leader who cares. And thanks for being a new friend too.
Thank you. I'm very happy to come and enjoy the beaches with you here in California. So thank you so much for having me, Mark. And I will definitely talk to you many more times.
You can count on it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Have a good day. Bye.